My name is Jailyn Zieme. I'm 34 years old, a financial director at a tech firm in Denver. And this is the story of how my own family stole $13,000 from me after I paid for my brother's wedding. And how one phone call turned everything around. It started with a wedding. The sun was setting behind the San Diego coastline, casting golden streaks across the ocean waves as my younger brother, Caleb, stood at the altar in a rented linen suit that didn't quite fit his frame. His new wife, Allie, looked beautiful and blissfully unaware of the debt they were walking into. The ceremony was picture perfect. Fairy lights blinked above us. Music drifted from the hired violinist. Guests clapped and teared up as Caleb said, "I do." I stood off to the side, smiling through the ache in my feet and the exhaustion in my bones. I had funded nearly everything, from the venue to the floral arrangements to the open bar. My parents were retired and barely covering their medical bills. Caleb had just finished paying off his student loans, and Allie's family wasn't in a place to help. I didn't hesitate. After all, it was family. Marcus, my boyfriend of 2 years, squeezed my hand during the reception. "You did a beautiful thing for your brother," he said. I smiled back, not realizing that less than 12 hours later, that warm glow would be replaced with something I couldn't have imagined. Betrayal deeper than any heartbreak. The morning after the wedding, I was in our hotel bathroom finishing a quick shower before we checked out. Marcus was packing our things. I grabbed my phone to pay for the room through the hotel app. But when I opened my banking app first, everything stopped. The balance on my main checking account had dropped from just over $21,000 to barely $8. Blinked. Refresh. Refreshed again. It wasn't a glitch. "Marcus." My voice cracked. "Something's wrong." He rushed over and looked at the screen. "What is it?" $13,000 is gone," I whispered. His jaw clenched as he grabbed the phone and tapped through the transactions. "These were all made last night," he said grimly. I saw the names and my stomach twisted. $4,000 to Carla Zieme, my sister. $5,000 to Nolan Zieme, Carla's husband. $4,000 to Diana Zieme, my mother. All at 10:47 p.m. My shower last night. My phone had been in my clutch. I left it on the dresser. I was paralyzed. Marcus didn't hesitate. "We need to call the bank. Now." I nodded numbly. We were in the elevator heading to the lobby when my phone rang. The screen lit up. "Mom." I answered, voice trembling. "Hi, Mom. I need to ask you something." "What is it, honey?" she said, chipper as ever. 3 large sums were transferred from my account last night. "Do you know anything about that?" Silence. Then laughter. "Oh, that. I figured you'd notice sooner." Honestly, I thought it would be more. My blood ran cold. "Mom, what are you saying?" "Carla said it was silly leaving that much in your account just sitting there. So we split it. Think of it as a wedding gift to Caleb." My ears rang. "Mom, that's theft." She snorted. "Don't be so dramatic, Jailyn. We're family. You're single. You make 6 figures. Caleb's just starting out. Are you really going to hoard all that money and live alone forever?" Marcus leaned in and grabbed the phone. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and firm. "I'm Jailyn's partner. What you just described is a criminal offense. Unauthorized use of someone's banking app. Are you a lawyer or just someone who likes to meddle?" She snapped. Took the phone back. "Mom, who took my phone to transfer the money?" "Carla," she said flatly. "She said your password was too easy. That's on you." Then she hung up. I stood there frozen. Marcus reached for my hand and held it tightly. "We're not letting this go," he said. I nodded, though I barely felt my own body. My heart was racing, not from fury, but from disbelief. I had always been the responsible one. The dependable one. I helped cover Carla's rent during the pandemic. Paid for Caleb's last semester of school. Paid Mom's medical deductible twice. Never asked for a dime in return. But now they had taken from me behind my back. Without shame. Without permission. And without a second thought. We drove straight to my parents' house in the suburbs. Marcus behind the wheel, silent. his jaw set like stone. I stared out the window as neighborhoods blurred past. The house was familiar. White siding, brown shutters, and a porch swing that creaked with the wind. But as we pulled up, it didn't feel like home. Felt like a crime scene. Carla opened the door before we rang the bell, her smile thin and forced. "Oh, Jailyn, you're back." I brushed past her without a word. In the living room, Mom was sorting through a stack of wedding photos. Nolan had his feet up on the coffee table, sipping from a mug that said, "Best dad ever." "We need to talk," I said. Mom looked up calm. "About the money?" "Yes." I scanned the room. "I want to know why the three of you thought you had the right to steal $13,000 from my bank account." Carla shrugged. "You should have picked a better password. Using your old cat's name." "Really?" Nolan chuckled. "I told her it was risky, but she said you wouldn't care." My fists clenched. "I wouldn't care." "You make enough," Mom said calmly. It made sense. "You're alone. Caleb's starting a family. Helping means I agree to it," I said, voice shaking. "This was stealing." "You would have said no," Carla shot back. "You always pretend to be generous, but when it matters you hold back. We're tired of waiting. So you stole my phone while I was in the shower and transferred the money yourselves," I said slowly, as if repeating it would make the absurdity of it finally register. Nolan leaned back in his chair. "You should be grateful it wasn't more." I turned to Mom. "You knew." "I suggested it," she said without flinching. Nolan needed car repairs. Carla needed to pay for Olivia's school fees. And I needed meds. My mouth went dry. "This is wrong," Marcus said. "You don't get to decide how someone else's money is used just because they're related to you." Carla snorted. "You again. What is this, a legal lecture?" "No," I said, voice calm and deadly. "This is your warning." The room went silent. I pulled out a stack of printed bank statements from my bag. "Over the past 3 years, I've given more than $20,000 to this family. Not $1 has been returned. I never complained. I thought I was doing what daughters and sisters do." I dropped the papers on the coffee table. "But this ends today." Carla shot up. "You won't dare take this to court." I stared her down. "Watch me." As I walked toward the door, every step felt like shedding a skin I'd worn for years. I wasn't the silent provider anymore. I wasn't the family piggy bank. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Back in Denver, I sat in silence for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft creak of Marcus pacing in the hallway. I stared at my laptop screen. The bank transactions pulled up again like scars across a body I knew too well. There they were. Every payment, every transfer, every favor disguised as a small ask. I'd never said no. Not once. Mom needed help with rent after Dad passed. Paid. Carla's daughter Olivia needed school supplies. Paid. Nolan's car broke down again. Paid. Not because I was rich, but because I was responsible. I had no husband, no kids, no dependencies. At least that's how they saw me. A freestanding ATM with no strings attached. "You haven't moved in hours," Marcus said gently, crouching beside me. "You okay?" I swallowed hard. I keep asking myself if this is my fault. "It's not," he said firmly. "They made a choice. You gave out of love. They took out of entitlement." I turned to him, eyes stinging. "But what if I hadn't made it so easy? What if I hadn't been so available?" "That's what they wanted you to believe. That this was your doing," he said. "Jailyn, they guilt you into silence. That's not generosity. That's manipulation." He was right. Deep down I had always known something was off. The way Mom said, "You're our rock," every time she needed something. How Carla cried to me on the phone, only to go radio silent until the next ask. How no one ever asked how I was doing. Not once. And now they'd taken more than just money. They'd stolen trust, pride, self-worth. I opened a new document and began typing. Every transaction, every message, every memory where I gave and they took. The total climbed. $2,000 for Olivia's braces. $1,500 for Mom's utility bills. $3,000 for Caleb's honeymoon flights. $7,000 for Carla's emergency root canal, which turned out to be a girls' trip to Cabo. By the end of the night, the number was just shy of $26,000. I leaned back in my chair, my entire body aching. I'm pressing charges. Marcus didn't flinch. Then we start building the case. We spent the next 2 days gathering everything. My phone logs, bank records, screenshots of conversations, and the audio I had secretly recorded during that confrontation in my parents' living room. Marcus even tracked the IP addresses used during the unauthorized transactions, all traced back to my mom's Wi-Fi. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was evidence. We walked into the Denver office of financial crimes on a Thursday morning. The air smelled like printer ink and burned coffee. A woman with tightly pinned hair and sharp eyes introduced herself as Officer Tina Hargrove, Family Financial Crimes Unit. "You're filing against immediate family?" she asked, flipping through the paperwork. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Mother, sister, and brother-in-law." She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Instead, she leafed through the stack. Her eyes narrowed on the transfer records. The unauthorized use of my mobile banking app. The audio clip where Mom casually admitted to suggesting the theft. Tina looked up. "You've done your homework." Marcus nodded. "She's not here for revenge. She's here for justice." Tina set the folder down. "This falls under familial financial exploitation. If intent is proven, and from what I'm seeing it will be, there are grounds for charges of theft, fraud, and digital privacy violations. We'll begin with a preliminary investigation and contact the district attorney's office if it meets threshold." That night I got a text from Mom. "You're going too far. You'll regret this." I stared at the message. No apology. No remorse. Just blame. Marcus sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "You don't have to respond." "I won't," I said, deleting it. "I'm done explaining myself." But they didn't stop. By the next morning, I'd received 8 voicemails, 11 text messages, and 2 emails. All variations of the same theme. "You're tearing this family apart. Think of the children. You're selfish, Jailyn. It's just money." Not one person said sorry. Not one person admitted fault. Then came the call from Caleb. I almost didn't answer. But something in me still hoped. Maybe he was different. "Jai." His voice was soft, hesitant. "I'm here," I said. "I heard about everything." "Sorry. I didn't know they were going to take your phone." I stayed quiet. "I wish I had stopped them. I overheard Carla talking about getting money from you, but I didn't think she'd actually." "You didn't speak up," I said quietly. "That's the same as standing beside them." "I know," he whispered. "But I want to make it right." "How?" "I'll testify." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "You'd do that." "They asked me to lie. Mom said if I get called I should say you gave the money willingly. But I won't." "Can't. I saw how they planned it. I even saw Carla typing your password into your phone while you were in the shower." A mix of anger and gratitude swelled in my chest. "Thank you. I don't know what this will cost me," he added. "But I won't be silent anymore." And with that, something shifted. For the first time in this entire nightmare, someone chose truth over comfort. Justice over loyalty. I wasn't alone anymore. The hearing date was set for the following month. I had a folder full of evidence, a brother willing to testify, and a partner who never once questioned my worth. But none of that made it easy. Every day leading up to the hearing felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of guilt and self-doubt. Would they paint me as vindictive, cold, unforgiving? Would I be the villain in their version of the story? But then I remembered something Marcus said the night we started building the case. "They're not angry because you did something wrong. They're angry because you finally said no." And he was right. I hadn't destroyed the family. They did, the moment they decided that my value was measured by what I gave, not who I was. The courthouse wasn't as grand as the movies make it seem. It smelled faintly of old wood and floor wax, and the fluorescent lights above gave everything a pale, sterile glow. I sat on the left side of the courtroom, flanked by Marcus and my attorney, Danielle Reeves, a sharp woman in her early 40s with a soft voice and piercing logic that made even the most confident liars trip on their words. Rachel and Kevin, Carla and Nolan, sat just 20 feet away but felt like they belonged to a different planet. Carla was in a tailored beige dress that did little to soften her sharp features, her arms crossed tightly, chin tilted with defiance. Nolan sat next to her like a statue, composed but hollow-eyed. My mother wasn't there. She had claimed a severe migraine and filed a doctor's note to be excused from court. Coward. Jason, Caleb, was already inside, seated in the hallway. He wore a pressed suit and kept glancing at me through the courtroom door's small glass window, nodding once when our eyes met. He had made his choice. Judge Nora Higgins entered the room with the commanding presence of someone who had seen hundreds of family dramas play out under oath. Her steel-gray hair was swept into a bun, and her tone was clipped, impartial. "This court will now hear case number 11-827B, she said, her voice echoing, involving allegations of unauthorized access to personal digital assets and financial misappropriation. Plaintiff, Jailyn Zieme. Defendants, Carla Zieme and Nolan Zieme." Danielle stood and spoke with practiced calm. "Your Honor, the defendants accessed my client's phone without permission, transferred $13,000 from her personal checking account, and distributed the funds amongst themselves and their mother, who is not present today." She presented the digital evidence, screenshots, time-stamped bank transactions, and Marcus's forensic logs tracing the IP addresses to my mother's home Wi-Fi. Then came the audio recording of my mother casually admitting that it was Carla who took the phone and that the password had been too easy. Gasps erupted from a few spectators in the back row, followed by a heavy silence. Carla's lawyer, a greasy-haired man named Evan Chase, stood and tried to turn the case into a moral dilemma instead of a legal one. "This was a family matter," he said, glancing toward the judge like he was hoping she'd agree. "It was not malicious. It was, perhaps, misguided, but it stemmed from love and familial obligation. My clients were trying to support their brother's wedding. With someone else's money," Danielle snapped. "Without consent. That's not love, Mr. Chase. That's larceny." Judge Higgins didn't say a word but took notes with quiet intensity. And then it was Jason's turn. He took the stand like he was walking into a fire, every step slow and cautious but unflinching. His voice trembled at first, but it steadied as he spoke. "I didn't know at first," he admitted. "But over time I heard things. My sister Carla and Nolan used to talk about Jailyn's money like it was inevitable, like it belonged to them. They said things like, 'She won't mind,' or 'She always gives in eventually.' I overheard Mom say Jailyn didn't need to be reminded every time, that they could just take what they needed and call it a family favor." He paused, breathing hard. "And I did nothing. I sat there and said nothing, even when I knew it was wrong. I couldn't breathe. My throat burned from holding back emotion." Jason looked directly at the judge. "But I'm here now because silence isn't neutral. It's permission. And I can't be a part of that anymore." Danielle nodded slightly, and I could feel Marcus squeeze my knee under the table. Silent he did it. Then it was my turn. I stood. My legs were steady, but my chest felt like it had a weight pressing on it. Still, when I spoke, my voice came out clear. "I never wanted to be here," I began. "I never thought I'd be the kind of person who had to take their own family to court. But when someone accesses your bank account without permission, moves thousands of dollars behind your back, and then has the audacity to blame you for reacting, that's not a misunderstanding. That's theft." I locked eyes with Carla. Her stare was ice. When I confronted them, there was no apology, no shame, just entitlement. Excuses like, "You don't need the money," or "We're family." But love doesn't steal. And family doesn't make you feel like a bad person for protecting what's yours. I looked at Judge Higgins. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because boundaries matter. Consent matters. And if I don't stand up now, it tells them and everyone watching that this kind of manipulation is acceptable. And it isn't. I sat down. My hands were shaking, but I didn't hide it. The judge asked for a recess and returned nearly an hour later with her verdict. In light of the evidence provided, the court finds the defendants guilty of unauthorized digital access and misappropriation of personal funds. Carla's eyes widened. Given this is a first offense and considering the presence of minor children, the court will not pursue incarceration. However, restitution of the stolen amount, $12,000, is ordered, plus $5,000 in emotional damages. A collective gasp echoed behind me. Additionally, the judge added, a restraining order barring the defendants from any contact with Ms. Zieme, personal, digital, or through intermediaries, will be in place for 5 years. Carla turned to Nolan in disbelief. Are you kidding me? Judge Higgins didn't flinch. Court costs will be the responsibility of the defendants. This hearing is now adjourned. The gavel struck once. Final. And I sat there stunned. Not victorious. Not smug. Just exhausted. Jason came over and rested a hand on my shoulder. You did it, he whispered. You stood up. I turned to him and smiled faintly. We did. Outside, the sky had cleared after a morning drizzle. The air was cold and crisp, the kind that stung your lungs a little but woke you up all the same. As Marcus opened the car door for me, I paused and looked back at the courthouse. For a long time I had believed that family was everything. But today I learned something even more important. Family without respect is just a trap. The morning after the verdict, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea, staring at the pale sunlight creeping through the blinds. The steam rose gently from the mug, but my hands were still cold. I thought I'd feel something more, relief, maybe even a sense of triumph. But mostly I just felt hollow. Marcus walked in, tying his robe, and leaned against the counter. You didn't sleep again, he said softly. I shook my head. It's like my brain can't turn off. It keeps replaying their faces. Carla's, Mom's, Jason's, everyone's. I rubbed my forehead. I keep thinking, did I do the right thing? Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat across from me and reached out for my hand. You did the hard thing. That doesn't mean it won't hurt. He was right. I had drawn a line, and lines always cut. But for the first time in my life, the cut was clean. Later that day, my phone rang with a Denver area code I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message appeared. Miss Zieme, this is attorney Sheila Ford from the Civil Enforcement Division. I wanted to inform you that the court-ordered asset recovery has begun. The defendants' bank accounts have been frozen and liens are being processed. Frozen. It felt like such a perfect word for what this had all become. By the end of the week, I received updates from both my attorney and Jason. Carla and Nolan had defaulted on their mortgage for 2 months. Kevin, Nolan, was terminated from his position at a local finance firm. Apparently, the internal compliance system flagged the court record, and his supervisor had no choice but to enforce their zero-tolerance policy on financial misconduct. Jason's text that night was short but heavy. Kevin's been fired. They're losing the house. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. But I didn't feel sorry either. Because what else could anyone expect? Actions have consequences. Especially when those actions involve breaching someone's bank account in the middle of the night and calling it a favor. 2 weeks later, I ran into someone unexpected at a furniture store near my office. Her name was Elise, a woman who had volunteered with Carla on a charity project a few years back. She didn't recognize me at first, but when she saw the name on my credit card, her eyes widened. You're Jailyn, Carla's sister. I nodded cautiously. She hesitated, then leaned in like she was about to share state secrets. I don't want to stir anything, but I saw Carla a few days ago. She looks different, tired, worn down. She was trying to sell a used stroller outside the grocery store. I stayed quiet. She always seemed like she had everything under control, Elise continued. But lately she's just angry, snapping at people, saying things like, "My sister ruined my life." Elise glanced at me. I don't know what happened, but maybe she's finally facing consequences? I smiled faintly. Maybe. When I got home, I found Marcus in the kitchen, stirring a pot of lentil soup. He turned and grinned. "You're home early." "Yeah," I said, setting my purse down. "Ran into someone who said Carla's been selling baby gear for cash." He paused ladle midair. "And how do you feel about that?" Thought for a moment. Lighter. Not happy. Just lighter. We ate dinner quietly that night, both of us knowing things had shifted. I had drawn a boundary, and it was holding. And every day that passed without more emotional blackmail, more manipulation, felt like a step toward healing. 1 week later, a new message popped up on my phone. Unknown number. "Jai, can you help your sister? The kids are suffering. The house is being taken." I didn't even need to ask who it was. My mother's tone was unmistakable. Guilt-laced, sharp, masked as concern. I stared at the text. Marcus looked up from his book. "Let me guess, Mom." "Yup. And she wants me to help Carla again. Says the kids are suffering." "Of course she does." He set his book down. "What are you going to do?" Paused, then typed one sentence. "Teach her that choices have consequences. And that family doesn't mean immunity." I hit send and blocked the number. The following weekend, something even more unexpected happened. A letter arrived. A real, physical letter, ivory envelope, no return address, just my name written in careful cursive. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Jailyn, you don't know me, but your story reached me. I read about the case in the local paper. I've been letting my sister drain me financially for years. She calls it love. I used to think I was selfish for wanting space. But after reading what you went through, I finally said no. Thank you. You didn't just protect yourself. You gave others the strength to stop bleeding for people who only take." Tears stung my eyes. I sat there on the couch, rereading the letter until the ink blurred. Later that evening, 2 more messages came through. A Facebook DM and a voicemail from women I'd never met, both saying the same thing. "Because of you, I finally said no." It was the first time I realized this wasn't just my story anymore. It was a lifeline for others drowning in the same kind of quiet exploitation, the kind that hides behind smiles and Sunday dinners. One night, after a long day at work, Marcus came out to the balcony holding 2 glasses of red wine. I was watering the small herb garden we'd built together. He handed me a navy velvet box. My breath caught. "Marcus, I was going to wait a few months, but what are we waiting for, really?" he said, smiling nervously. "If there's someone I want beside me for every storm, every sunrise, it's you." Open the box. A simple platinum ring, elegant and unassuming. I choked on a laugh. "This is really happening." He nodded. "So, Jailyn Zieme, will you marry me?" I didn't say anything. I just threw my arms around him and whispered, "Yes," because this wasn't just about love. It was about choosing love that doesn't ask you to shrink, to bend, to bleed. It was about beginning a life that started from truth, not guilt. A month passed after Marcus proposed, and everything in my world felt quieter, more intentional. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't waking up to missed calls, guilt-laced voicemails, or shame-drenched requests for a little help. Instead, I woke up to the smell of coffee, the sound of Marcus humming in the kitchen, and the soft rustling of our wedding planning binder being flipped open on the dining table. I was learning how to breathe again. One rainy Sunday afternoon, I received an email from a women's mental health forum I had joined quietly after the lawsuit began. They'd seen a short post I wrote, a piece I never expected anyone to notice, and asked if I'd consider expanding it into a column. The title, "I Set Boundaries and I'm Not Sorry for It." Something stirred in me. I hadn't realized how many people were reading, watching, silently nodding in rooms I would never walk into. Said yes. I began writing during lunch breaks, after work, on weekends. And the responses poured in. Women and men messaged me privately. I stopped sending money to my brother who gambled it away every month. I told my mom no, and she hasn't spoken to me in 3 weeks. But I finally slept last night. I never thought I could survive without my family's approval. But turns out I'm thriving. I wasn't famous. I wasn't a therapist. I was just someone who finally said, enough. And that was enough for others to find the strength to do the same. Then, one late autumn afternoon, a message arrived that froze me. It was from my mother. Not a text, not a voicemail, but a handwritten letter, folded into a plain white envelope. No return address. I held it for a long time before opening it. Part of me didn't want to read it. But the other part, the one still longing for a mother's warmth, tore it open. The note was brief. Jailyn, they're struggling. Kevin can't find work. Carla cries every day. The house is up for auction. Olivia asks why Aunt Jailyn doesn't visit anymore. You made your point. Please, just help them. You're better off than they are. You always have been. Mom. There was no I'm sorry. No recognition of the betrayal. Just the same old script. You have more, so you owe more. Marcus found me at the kitchen table, clutching the letter with stiff fingers. Another attempt, he asked. I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. She still doesn't get it. He kneeled beside me, resting his hands on mine. That's because she doesn't want to. It's easier for her to call you heartless than to admit she raised children who stole from their sister. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. I'm not calling her back. Not this time. He smiled. You're getting good at choosing yourself. And I was. Our wedding was planned for spring. Small, intimate. Just the people who had walked with me through the fire and never asked me to carry it alone. Helen, Marcus's mother, sent me her famous pumpkin pie recipe with a handwritten note that said, "From one mother to another. I hope my new daughter loves this as much as we do." That one line broke something open in me. Acceptance. Unconditional, uncomplicated, undeserved. One evening, while trying on dresses with Marcus's sister in a cozy boutique, I received a call from Jason. He was in tears. I just got a message from Mom, he said. She said she's cutting me off. Says I betrayed the family by testifying. Carla won't let Olivia talk to me. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Jason. He was silent for a while. Then he said something that gutted me. I used to think keeping the peace meant keeping silent. But now I know, it just meant keeping myself small. Closed my eyes. You don't have to do that anymore. Not with me. He chuckled weakly. You know what? I think this is the first time I've ever felt like your brother. Not your burden. When spring finally came, it was the kind of day you dream about. Clear skies, cherry blossoms in full bloom, and a soft breeze that made everything feel like a slow exhale. Under a canopy of pale pink petals beside Seward Lake, Marcus and I said our vows. Jason stood beside me, his voice steady as he gave a short speech during the reception. I once stayed silent because I was afraid of losing my family, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But my sister taught me that real family doesn't make you feel afraid. They make you feel like yourself. There weren't many people there, but every single one of them had held me through my darkest hours. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn my place. I already had it. Later that evening, as Marcus and I stood on the balcony of our hotel room overlooking the lake, he poured 2 glasses of wine and clinked his against mine. To the one who said no, he whispered, and never looked back. I laughed, leaning into him. To the one who never let me forget who I was. The stars above us shimmered quietly. No drama, no demands, just light. That night I wrote in my journal. They say I destroyed the family. But a real family isn't built on guilt, theft, or silence. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to keep playing a game I never agreed to. And the most beautiful part, I didn't feel alone. The weeks after the wedding settled into a new rhythm. Quiet mornings, shared dinners, long walks, and moments of silence that no longer felt heavy. I wasn't bracing myself for the next explosion, the next manipulation, or the next crisis disguised as family. I was just living. And for someone like me, someone who had built her identity on being the rescuer, the fixer, it was a revolution. Then, one morning, my inbox lit up with a subject line that made my breath catch. Your article has reached 1 million readers. It was the column I'd written. I set boundaries and I'm not sorry for it, now quietly going viral. The message from the editor was short and stunned. We've never had a submission explode like this. You've struck a nerve, Jailyn. Would you consider a regular column? I blinked at the screen, the gravity of it sinking in. Me. The woman who had once cried in her bathroom, wondering if she'd destroyed her family by saying no, was now giving others permission to say it too. Agreed. The comments on the article ranged from heartbreaking to victorious. My mother used to say I owed her my salary because she gave me life. I stopped apologizing last week. You're right. Family is not an excuse for theft, whether it's money or emotional peace. Your story gave me the courage to finally stop paying my sister's rent. For the first time in 15 years, I feel free. I cried reading them, not because I was sad, but because I knew now, I hadn't just survived what happened. I had alchemized it into something that could help others rise. And yet, even as the world celebrated my story, the shadows still reached in sometimes. One afternoon, while watering the basil on our balcony, my phone rang. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. But curiosity got the better of me. I pressed the green button and said softly, "Hello." A voice I hadn't heard in months came through. Thin, tired, but unmistakably hers. Jailyn. Froze. "Mom," I said, my tone neutral. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then, I wanted to talk. I didn't respond. "I know you think I'm a terrible mother," she continued. "But I never wanted this. I never wanted my kids fighting. I didn't mean for everything to fall apart. Didn't mean for it." My voice sharpened. "You stood there silent while they stole from me. You defended them. You told me I should be fine with it because I had more. And when I didn't stay quiet, you blamed me." "I was scared," she whispered. "Of what?" I asked. "Of Carla being mad at you. Of the truth being told. Or of losing the person who kept bailing everyone out." Another long pause. "You're different now," she said finally. "Colder." "No," I replied. "I'm just not bleeding anymore to keep other people warm." She let out a sigh. "So this is it then. We're done." "I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm not closing the door. But I'm not leaving it wide open for more harm either. That's the difference." She didn't argue. She didn't apologize either. But she said goodbye softly. And I hung up, heart bruised but intact. That evening, Marcus found me curled up on the couch. "She called," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "And? She still doesn't see what she did. But she's starting to feel what it cost her." He nodded. "Good. That's a start." I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. "It hurts. Still." He wrapped an arm around me. "Healing always does. But you're doing it anyway." That night I received an email with no sender name. Just a single line. "You might have one in court, but you've lost your family. Congratulations." I didn't even blink. I hit delete. Because by now, I understood something I once couldn't bear to accept. If you have to betray yourself to keep people around, they're not your family. They're your captors. The following week, Jason invited us to Olivia's birthday party. His daughter, not Carla's. He had full custody now after a quiet divorce that unfolded in the background, almost inevitably, once the court ruling came down. "I want you to come," he said over the phone. "You're her favorite aunt. And I think she needs to see what love really looks like." Marcus and I went. When I walked into the backyard, Olivia sprinted toward me, arms wide open, screaming, "Aunt Jailyn!" I scooped her up, twirling her in the air. laughter bursting from both of us like a spark finally lit. She didn't know anything about the court hearings or bank accounts or betrayal. All she knew was that I was here, present, smiling, whole. And that was enough. Later that night, as Jason and I sat side by side, sipping sparkling water and watching the kids play tag under the string lights, he said, "You know what scares me?" I looked at him. That for a long time I thought the version of family we had was normal. I thought guilt and silence and manipulation were just part of the package. "They're not," I said quietly. He turned to me. "You showed me that. You gave me the blueprint to break out." Smiled. "You just had to choose it." He laughed a little. "And now we're the black sheep, huh?" "Maybe," I said. "But I'd rather be the black sheep than the golden doormat." We clinked our glasses. In that moment I realized I had spent years trying to earn a place in a family that didn't value me. But now I was building one, person by person, on truth, accountability, and actual love. A family I didn't have to finance to keep. A family that saw me, not as a bank account but as a sister, a partner, a human being. Spring gave way to early summer, and with it came a clarity I hadn't known I needed. The air felt lighter, the days longer, and my heart, finally, quiet. For so long I had measured love by sacrifice, measured worth by how much pain I could swallow before speaking up. But now I was measuring my life by peace. And peace, it turned out, was priceless. One afternoon, I sat by the window with a cup of mint tea, watching the sunlight filter through the lace curtains. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the Community Mental Health Journal where I had started my column. "Jailyn, your latest piece hit 2 million reads. The editor of a national podcast is asking if you'd be open to sharing your story on air." I smiled to myself. Months ago, I was terrified that telling the truth would leave me alone. Now I was being asked to tell it louder. Said yes. When the podcast aired, my inbox flooded again. But this time it wasn't manipulation or threats or guilt trips. It was gratitude. "You helped me stand up to my father. I finally said no to my brother and he called me names. But I slept through the night. I didn't think I could live without their approval. Turns out I can live without being drained." Every time I read those words, a knot in my chest unraveled. And then, on a warm Saturday morning, a letter arrived. This one wasn't anonymous, or masked in cruelty. It was from a woman named Teresa Langley, a retired teacher from Oregon. She wrote, "Dear Jailyn, I've been financially supporting my adult daughter for almost 30 years. Every time I tried to set boundaries, she told me I was abandoning her, that I wasn't being a good mother. But your story made me realize I wasn't a bad mother. I was just a woman who loved too hard in the wrong way. And now, at 65, I've finally stopped. Thank you. You didn't just change your own life. You gave women like me permission to stop apologizing." Cried reading it. Because all those nights I sat alone wondering if I was wrong, those nights weren't wasted. They were building something bigger than I ever imagined. Marcus found me at the table, the letter still trembling in my hands. "She's free," I whispered. He pulled out a chair beside me. "You gave her that." I turned to him, brushing away a tear. "And you gave me the space to find myself again." He smiled. "That's what love is, Jailyn. Not a transaction. Not a bargain. Just space to be who you are." Not long after, a publishing house reached out. They had seen the viral articles and the podcast interview. They wanted to offer me a book deal. Memoir. A guide for survivors of familial financial abuse. For a moment I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to do it, but because I knew what it would mean. That my story, every ugly, painful, raw part, would be out in the world bare. But then I remembered the voicemail from that woman, crying because she finally said no. The email from the man who stopped paying his sister's rent. The mother who stopped feeling guilty for keeping her own paycheck. I emailed the publisher back. Yes, I'd be honored. The contract came a week later. That night, I sat with Marcus on the same balcony where he had once handed me a ring and promised me peace. "I'm going to write it," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He already knew. It's not revenge, I said. It's a reckoning. For every person who thinks they're alone in this kind of pain. You're not just healing, he said. You're helping others heal too. And maybe that's what all of this was about. Not just reclaiming my money. Not just setting boundaries with my mother or Carla or Nolan. But becoming something I never thought I could be. Oh. One spring afternoon, as Marcus and I walked hand in hand through the local farmer's market, I spotted Jason and Olivia ahead of us. Olivia saw me first, waving like a lighthouse in the crowd. Aunt Jai. I scooped her up, kissing her cheek. Jason smiled. She asks about you all the time. Good, I said. I want her to know she's always got me. Later, as we sat under a tree with lemonade and strawberries, Jason said something that stayed with me. I used to think love was about loyalty, he said. But now I know it's about honesty. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. He nodded. Or close the door. And open another one somewhere safer. He looked at me, his eyes soft. Thank you, Jailyn. For showing me there's another way. I squeezed his hand. You showed yourself. I just went first. That night, back home, I wrote the first sentence of my book. They stole $13,000 from me. But what they really tried to steal was my silence. Kept writing. Through tears. Through laughter. Through long pauses where I had to remember who I was before the guilt, the exhaustion, the endless giving. And when I finished the first chapter, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. The kind that doesn't come from rescuing anyone else. The kind that comes from rescuing yourself. As I closed my laptop, I glanced at the wedding photo on the shelf. Marcus and I, laughing under the cherry blossoms, eyes full of peace. And in that moment, I whispered to myself, you didn't lose your family. You found the one you were meant to build. Jailyn Zieme's story is a powerful reminder that family is not a free pass to exploit or manipulate. Saying no isn't cruelty, it's courage. Standing up to betrayal, even when it wears the mask of love, takes unimaginable strength. But as Jailyn proved, boundaries aren't the end of love. They're the beginning of real healing. If you've ever felt pressured to give until it hurt, remember this. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are brave for choosing it. What do you think of Jailyn's journey? Have you ever had to choose truth over family? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful stories that prove justice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers back louder.